Hi, I'm Jamie, and this is JJ, and welcome to another episode of Unscripted with JJ and Jamie. On today's episode, JJ, let's share some of the ups and downs and rewards of being an entrepreneur. So, what are some of the most rewarding things that you think we've experienced at Magical Vacation Planner?
I think the one of the most rewarding things would definitely have to be the growth of the company and the size of the company. To think that this started with you in the beginning, I think that just speaks volumes when you see all of the advisors that have been impacted, in such a positive way. So, which leads me to number two. Number two would be, I think, one of the biggest, most successful things that we have achieved here is the advisors and what they've been able to accomplish, through their hard work and how that has impacted their families.
I got an email from one of our advisors the other day, and she said back in 2019, you sat down with her and said, you can make six figures doing this. And she said she thought you was crazy. And I laughed about it. I actually called her afterwards because it was kind of funny. She knew where she was. She knew the whole story of where you told her that. And she said now that she is making six figures, she's just shocked. And she said, thank you for believing in her when she didn't believe in herself. And I think to me, that's one of the most rewarding things of this job that we have here at Magical Vacation Planner is so many times people just, they don't know what they don't know. And we can see it. We know what is out there. And it's just kind of saying, hey, it's okay to be successful.
Absolutely. Wait till she hears what I have for her next.
She
probably won't believe this as
I
well.
told her you had some tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah, if you go all the way back to the early days, in the original five, that we had talked about doing this, they also had said the same thing. When you told me that, I couldn't even fathom, I couldn't believe what you were telling me at that time, and they've said that they were skeptical, but now today they're like, just tell me, I believe you. So it's about, when this person that actually reached out to you, when they told you that, now it's about how do you take your business even further? Because you'll come to a crossroad where you have to make a decisions on the things that you're going to do to take your business to the next level, or do you stay, where you're at and stay content? You know, for me personally, I have a drive always trying to see how far I can go, how far I can help somebody get with their business, and hopefully this person is at that stage.
Right. I think back of when we first started, you said with the original 4 or 5 of us. And I remember saying, hey guys, if we do this right, we can make enough money to pay for our vacations. So it's so neat. Like to me, that's what's rewarding. I mean, there's so many rewarding aspects of this industry, but I think that's one because like when we first started, I was like, if we can make $5,000 a year doing this, like this is a great opportunity. And then we've just grown. It didn't happen overnight. We've been in business for 18 years now. So it's just really neat not ever staying content with where we are. And I think that that's one thing that you and I do is we're always looking for that next adventure. And sometimes that's scary to people because we are always one of the agents said the other day, it's like, well, you guys did People Mover and then we did this and then we did that. And, it's like we did NASCAR for 2 years and we didn't. And I said, well, that's not something, it's not uncommon to do something for 2 years and then not do it again. And, so I think that sometimes, we think you got to stay on this path and this is what it looks like. But true entrepreneurship is it doesn't look it there's not a roadmap. There's not this is what it looks like. And I think that one thing that you and I bring to the table is we're not afraid to try, we're not afraid to fail, and we give it our all.
Correct. And business always evolves. So business doesn't work out when you stay in the same place,
Right.
when you stay still. And that's one of the things, with our magical vacation planners, we're always trying to get to them to think of themselves as entrepreneurs, not just travel advisors, but business owners. And if you can get them to start thinking and accepting the fact that they are business owners, they're entrepreneurs, then you're always thinking, okay, how do I nurse, my business? How do I get my business to the next level? How do I continue to keep my business growing? All the other things that come into play, your service, your marketing, all that stuff is still going to happen, but you're thinking about what is that next level? Where can I take my business to? And that, I think that's a key.
I think that's one of the things that was hard for me, that you and I butted heads a lot in the beginning when we first started working together, because I don't think anybody loves change, but I think to get to the next level, I mean, you have to get comfortable with change. And I think that a lot of times you would come in and you would say, hey, and you always push the envelope and you said, let's do this. And I'm like, but I'm over here and I'm so comfortable and everything's working so well. And then you would kind of push me, and then it would disrupt things a little bit. And, but it always works out and it always makes us stronger. But it's like going to the gym. Like, nobody wants to do it. I mean, I guess there's some people that want to do it. Once you do it, you're happy you went, but it's just that, everything's working so well. Like, I don't want to disrupt.
Yeah. Well,
But in entrepreneurship, disruptions
that's what I said.
Yeah.
I actually have the chills that you brought that word up, because when you get into business, and there's a lot of companies that start businesses and their businesses grow because they figure out something that disrupts the standard.
Right.
Okay. So disrupting is not such a bad thing. That's where you experience these breakthrough results, is when something's being disrupted. Just like get out of your comfort zone, do something a little bit differently than everybody else is doing. Try something. When we tried NASCAR, there wasn't a travel company in it. We was out to disrupt things, to figure things out. And that's what you have to be willing to do if you're trying to have breakthrough results and things like that.
Right. So I think that's one of the things. And no matter if it's travel, no matter if it's real estate, if it's a restaurant, whatever it is, you have to always be thinking of your next move. You cannot get complacent, because the second you do, you're going to get passed. You're going to become irrelevant. I was talking to a lady today about makeup, and, we were just talking about how makeup has just evolved over the years. It's like, people could get it through Mary Kay, but then, now there's Sephora. So, just like some of the big name brands that we grew up with, and, we just, it's just, makeup is sold different than it was 20 years ago.
My grandma, was an Avon.
Well, we talked about that.
It's Avon. Yeah. I remember she would go from house to house, knocking on people's doors, asking them if they wanted to buy some makeup. And I can remember the smell of the makeup. I can remember the oils that we used that actually helped against for mosquitoes and bugs.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Skin so soft.
Now you have Sephora, you have Ulta.
Right.
Is it Ulta?
Ulta.
Ulta. See, look, I don't even buy makeup.
Yeah.
But I know the names of these companies,
right.
And it's so differently in all the different types of makeup that's out there, But that's someone willing to take that chance to disrupt, the industry a little bit. And now look what's happened.
Right. And I think that's how, travel looks different now than it did 10 years ago, than it looked 20 years ago. When you played basketball, we had to get our airline tickets through a travel agency. And, then it evolved to where it was online. And then it evolved to where there were like online travel agents or people book direct. And then the shift went to people really want travel agents because there was nobody to call if there was a problem. Then things shift. And, it's like right now, it's really the trend is using personal vacation planners. So, even in travel, it evolves and it looks different year after year. And I think that's the fun job that we have, is finding the way that works, but staying relevant, but not getting complacent.
And, and being able to disrupt a little bit more in the travel industry. You've got big box stores selling travel now. Right.
We went to Costco the other day, and it was like, they were selling tires. They were selling where you could get a key fob. You could get solar panels. You could get travel. And I'm like, I don't, I mean, obviously I'm biased. I'm going to say you need to use us and
Right, but
not the same.
this is a benefit of a planner
Right,
versus a big box store.
right,
The planner is able to work, I believe a lot closer than these big box stores
yeah,
and provide a totally different experience than what they can get going to a big box store.
100%.
Because a big box store is not going to give that consumer their personal cell numbers. They're not going to
Right,
get to know really their family. And, basically it's more of a transaction versus
right,
them planning an experience for a consumer.
100%.
Okay, so Jamie, entrepreneurship often takes on some type of a risk, whether it's a calculated risk or a strategic, plan this out there. Can you think of any time where you have taken on some risk that's really transitioned or transferred over into growth for the company?
Okay, so I think that entrepreneurship is a very scary place to be. And, before we did the travel agency, we also had the eBay store. And I think like risks look different as you evolve. So I'm going to take you back to the eBay days when I think it was Best Buy or one of the stores like that had TVs with VHRs
Mm-hmm.
built in the TV, and they were like dirt cheap. So I bought like 20 of them because I was like, I can sell these on eBay for double, if not triple, of
Right.
what it was. And I remember I didn't sell them as fast as I thought I would. And my rule has always been never be in debt. So it's like, so if I put something on the credit card, I had to pay it off by the end of the month. And this particular month, I didn't have, like, I hadn't sold the money and received it by PayPal. So I was going to owe, but I hate owing on the credit card. So you and I had an agreement that I would never ask to dip into our personal money. And the reason that is because we saw a lot of basketball players, they would open restaurants or they would open these businesses, and they would always, well, I'm just going to dip into a little bit and then I'm going to dip. And once you dip in that first time, it becomes easy and it becomes almost like a crutch. So there was that. But then also, if I ask you, I would like have felt like I lost, and we're very
Yes.
competitive people. So I ended up going to my mother and I asked her if she would loan me some money. And I said, you can't tell dad, because I would have got a lecture from my dad about why did I buy it. If I, it's like my parents are very traditional. And my dad would probably say, well, just let it go over. And my mom would say, absolutely don't pay the interest. But so it would have been a really big deal. And I just didn't want it to be a big deal. I just wanted to, like, I just needed a little, a little cushion, like a week or two. And so needless to say, I was like, please don't tell dad. And my mom said, I'm not keeping this from your dad. I said, okay, well, please give me a 2 week, tell him give me 2 weeks. If I don't have it back, then he can give me the lecture. But until then, please just, I don't even want to talk about it. I messed up. I took a risk.
Yes.
It didn't pay off. I
Yes.
messed up. And so she loaned me the money. I paid the credit card. I had her paid back like in a week and a half. And I was like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to listen to my dad lecture. JJ don't even know. I didn't even tell you that story for like 10 years.
Oh, I remember.
So for me, that was a risk that I never wanted to feel that feeling again, but I knew that I could do it. I just had to calculate it right. And so there's that risk. But I think for me, even in whether it was eBay, whether it was the clothing, whether it's real estate, whether it's the travel, I like to push the envelope as far as I can. And so I
Yes.
think with me, it's easy because I know I have my mom and dad I had my mom and dad as a backup, but I also, if worst case scenario, I
Yes.
had you.
Yeah.
And so there was an instance a couple months ago that I realized that I was kind of in a situation, and I freaked out. And it was probably, I didn't tell you for a couple of weeks, and you're like, why didn't you tell me? I was like, because I can't, like, it's a form of failure. I'm like, I want to fix this problem before I tell you that I had a problem. And you just,
But I would have loved to help you fix
I
it.
know it, but it's that I don't want to ask for help.
Yes.
I want to
I
fix it
understand.
before I have to come and say, hey,
Yes.
because after 18 years of being in business, we still have not had to dip into any
Yeah.
of our personal money. And there's just that sense
Yeah.
of I know it's there, and I think that's maybe why I do what some may say dumb risk or dumb things, but the risks are so necessary in entrepreneurship. And if you don't take those leaps of faith, you don't know how far you can go. So like what was a $1,500 thing in 18 years ago, whenever I was doing the thing where I asked my mom for the money. And then you fast forward a day and it was like possibly like a $1.5 million mistake. I mean, my friend says it's just extra zeros, but it's scary, but that's the risks. And that's and that was kind of an oversight on my part. It was very fixable a long time ago. I messed up.
Well,
I messed up.
That takes me all the way back to the beginning of my career, which actually ties into Magical Vacation Planner. At the time, I had no clue it would tie into Magical Vacation Planner, what I was learning, what I was doing back then. But it has definitely turned into a part of Magical Vacation Planner. Being an entrepreneur, and I considered, playing basketball entrepreneurship because I had to trust, first of all, that once I left the United States and I went to Italy, I didn't know anyone in Italy. I didn't know what their leagues were like in Italy. I didn't understand how they were going to pay me, how I was going to receive this, whether it's going to be in cash, how was I going to get the cash back to America? I didn't know any of this stuff. I was a young man that was 3 years old. And this is the first time that I would have ever been, traveling outside of the country. So there was a lot of risk involved. If I get over and I play well, are they going to pay me? How am I going to fight for it if they don't? There's a lot of risk that's associated with it. So, and I go there, I don't come from a lot of means, growing up, we struggle quite a bit, but I am promised to make this crazy salary that now it's a young kid with a lot of money. If they, as long as they pay me, it'd be a lot of money. So here I am taking these risks and I get over there, I play and I have a, pretty good season. I learn to want all the money back, but that's just where the risk starts. Right. Because I get back, luckily I start to speaking with some of my former, coaches, and they tell me, take this opportunity to invest. There's another risk. Okay.
Scary.
Because I don't come from means. I've never had these conversations.
Yeah.
And now all the money that I've made, you want me to give it to someone else for them to invest the money that I've worked pretty hard for, that I've never had, and let them invest it for you.
Right. Which now we've heard horror stories, but back then you didn't really hear of the horror stories because, news didn't travel that fast on things like that. But nowadays you hear of athletes that trust investors, advisors, it's like, and just rob blind family members, like, oh, let me handle your money. And it's scary.
It is very, very scary.
But you don't know what you don't know. And you have to, like, at some point you have to trust somebody else to handle your money, to do a job, to, like, even with MVP, we talked about this the other day, like when it was just me and I was the accountant, I was the marketer, I was the seller, I was the lawn keeper, I was the custodial person, I was the maintenance person, I was the plumber. I did everything in that building. And but it's like, as you grow, I think my first goal was I wanted to have somebody that I could hire to clean. I think before I even hired Michelle, I think I hired somebody to clean our house. It's like, because your job as an entrepreneur is to work yourself out of a job. So you have to find people that one, want to listen to what you're doing, but also that understand your vision and trust your vision.
And this is exactly where I'm going with the trust. So, I come back, I talk to my coach, Dave Skinner. From Sullivan Business College, and he puts me in contact with Walter Underwood. Walter Underwood was an investor with American Express that was later bought out by American Enterprise. They changed their name. And I met with Walter. He explained to me what I could accomplish at that age if I was to make the investment, invest in insurance. I could pay my insurance for the rest of my life. If I did it for 5 or 6 years, it's going to grow. It's going to earn money. It's going to, and all this is new to me. It's still new to me. So being able to invest in there, make money through that had allowed us later on in years to not dip into what the additional money we were making, but also it helped us purchase the building for Magical Vacation Planner.
Right.
So that's the risk.
Right.
The payoff of the risk.
And it always doesn't work well for people. Like it's not a foolproof. It doesn't always work well.
And you need to understand.
But you have to stay on top of things. You have to, you have to, this is what I always say. If you take a referral from somebody, it's more likely. So Coach Skinner told you about Mr. Underwood. So like really Mr. Underwood, if he did something wrong, would make Mr. Skinner look bad. So it's like, right. If you get somebody that just is coming out of nowhere, we're always skeptical of people. I mean, I'm maybe not as skeptical as you are, but you're always asking a lot of questions. And when I first met you, it made me feel uncomfortable. But now, fast forward 30 years and I'm like, I 100% get it. And I'm thankful for that. But that I think is where we complement each other, because you and I come from so different our backgrounds are so different that we really complement one another in that. But one of the things too with us is that the discipline of it. We sent everything but $1,000 back home. Most people weren't willing to do that because it was a large amount, and it's hard to, it's like, well, but I want that purse, or I want that car, or I want the, and it's like, and we just kind of like out of sight, out of mind, and we were very disciplined.
Part of the reason was also, I remember November the 10th, 1992, the night that
I don't remember the dates.
That's okay. November the 10th, 1992. I'm telling you the date. The night that I met you, remember I had just bought a new car.
Yes.
Okay. So I also had made, a little money before I met you.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did was bought a new car. Okay. And left the country.
Right. So it makes no sense.
It made no sense. So the car remained parked. I've taken a big part of what I had made to put it towards a car.
Yeah.
So I also did the same thing that a lot of people do. I wasted money, but luckily, when we got together, and now I'm not thinking of only myself, I'm thinking of you as well, and how we're going to achieve, a good life together. So that's when we started talking about, let's save, let's only live on this amount. Does it make sense to invest money into material things? It's going to sit there, waste or rot, whatever. We can save all of this. And, for when we do retire from basketball, but we are still going to have, the majority of our lives ahead of us. So, but going back, just one more thing, just going back to Dave Skinner.
Yeah.
The reason I went with Walter Underwood, because Dave Skinner had come into my life, and it was somebody that I trusted, and he was also walking with me to make sure that I was okay, even after Sullivan University. Mm-hmm. So again, having that person that you believe in, having that person that you trust in, and know that once you find some success, they're still looking to help you be even more successful.
100%. And, those coaches that you had were really they were instrumental in where you are today. You said something a minute ago that made me think that I don't know that we've ever talked about this, but we were lucky enough to have been thinking and planning about retirement from basketball. So in our early 30s, we had already been thinking about life after basketball, which is like retirement. We knew that we would both have to enter the workforce, but we knew that there's an end, to the basketball. And I think that a lot of people our age really don't start thinking about retirement until they're in their 50s, mid 50s, and like maybe 55, some 60. But we experienced that at such a young age that I think that positioned us too in where we are today, because we had already thought about retirement, whereas most 20, 30-year-olds are not, at least in our generations. This generation probably, they probably do. They're a lot more advanced than we are in a lot
Yes.
of
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of areas. But I don't know of any of our friends that ever talked about retirement. And you and I were always talking, whether it was to Mr. Underwood or other investors or, people in the real estate. I think that you and I really had a leg up on that because we knew that things aren't going to last forever.
Correct.
And I just think we had a very good outlook on that. So that's kind of my thought on retirement. Whereas now I hear, a lot of people our age that we went to school with, they're starting now to just think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we were thinking about it in our 20s. And I think that was beneficial to us.
Yeah.
Another risk I think of that we took was moving to Florida. That was risky.
Very
It was
risky.
uncomfortable. You talk about uncomfortable, that was uncomfortable. I love to visit Florida. I love to vacation here. But to up and move and say, hey, we're not living in Indiana next to your parents anymore was scary.
It was scary because these are the people that you've been around, for 20 years.
Right.
And now it's, you're going to up and you're going to move. The job that I was working, I had been with that company for 8 years, all the security with the insurance. And I'm starting with the insurance. Notice I didn't say with the salary. The salary was good, but having that security, the insurance, that's a big risk. And that was always your hang up.
That was the craziest thing. Is you're 100% right. Like, it was never about the salary. It was never about the income. It was the fear of not having insurance. And I look back and I think I was a dummy. It's like, what a dummy. Like that's what probably we postponed it for a year or two, just because I was scared to not have health insurance. It's so bizarre what stops us from going to that next level or from making that jump or taking that risk.
Pursuing that dream.
Yeah. It's really the only way to look at it is it's always scary and it's the unknown and nobody's there saying, hey, it's going to be perfect. And I think that if you know me, you've heard me say, it'll be fine. And I used to just say, it'll be fine. But then I know there's some situations where people probably assume that it's not fine. So I started adding, it'll be fine. And if it's not fine, it'll still eventually be fine. Meaning, we'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. If things don't go the way we want, it's still going to be fine. And, I think that sometimes fine people define as a win or it's a success but ultimately it's always going to be okay.
Absolutely.
And if it's not okay,
you're going to pivot.
You're going to figure out how to make it okay because it's got to be okay. So it's really not like that saying that I say. I know people laugh at me. They're like, that's a dumb statement. But I'm like, well, it will. It'll be fine. And if it's not, it will still be okay. Like, we're still going to figure it out.
And I think that was one of those calculated risks that we took that really turned out, for the better, because we were able to now be closer to our suppliers, where we can meet with them more frequently, have, a lot of one-on-ones, versus just having, a chit chat over the telephone. We got closer to, the ports, where we were doing, a lot of business, with cruising and things like that. We got closer to being able to jump on a plane and go to Mexico or, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Europe, so a lot of these things really benefited us to be down here. And then I think one of the other big things is, having our education facility here, that's something. It's hard to get people in Indiana. But you tell them you're close to Disney.
I know. That's the crazy thing. Disney. I was so sure that when we moved down here that I would get to go to Disney all the time. And I think we went more when we lived in Indiana than we do now. But you took me for my birthday to the California Grill and we had dinner.
It was wonderful.
It was wonderful. And we've since moved, and we're a little bit farther from Disney now, and it takes us now about 45 minutes, which seems like 500 years, and every time we do it, I'm like, we're so far away, and I
yeah, because
grumble.
you went from about 7 minutes to
Yeah.
40 minutes.
And I said to you at dinner, though, I said, I'm actually glad because I appreciate this more than I did when we were 7 minutes away and I never went. But it was just there and it was just so tangible, and I could go if I wanted and it was no big deal. Now I actually have to think, do I really want to drive 45 minutes an hour? Which was kind of what it was when we lived in Indiana. It's like we would drive 2 hours to the airport, we'd fly 2 hours down here, so we could even come for the weekend, but it was still, it's a different feel. But I think us moving down here was one of the biggest um, business decisions and wise business decisions that we made. And I don't regret it.
I would agree with that. And if I had to give any advice out there for someone that's a MVP and they're thinking about growing their business, and take the risk.
It's scary.
Take the risk. The only risk, or the biggest risk, is not to take the risk.
Right. I think that's where, if you take it and you fail, like that's one thing. But if you don't take it, because I think that there's a lot of people that thought about joining MVP when we lived back home in Indiana, and I think a lot of them now are like, oh man, I should have joined. I should have done that, because then they look at the other agents and think,
I love
wow.
that you just said this word. You just said fail.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, failure is a part of success. If you don't fail, you don't learn. I was reading something just the other day, and it was about Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm always reading stuff about basketball, but Michael Jordan said he has missed 9,000 shots. He has been given the last shot to win the game and has failed 26 times. Okay? If you start thinking about this, he said, and all of this failure has led to his success. You think about that. That's where you learn.
100%. And I think that that's where I'll speak for myself because you made better grades than me. But, there was just something about like getting an F, on a paper, that you worked really hard for. And it is just so disappointing. And, especially if you worked hard on it and then you get an F and it's like, but I'm thankful for that I did as a kid or as a young person fail. I failed so many times. I mean, I became comfortable with failure. Now, I don't go out every day and say, hey, I want to try something and fail.
No, you're not looking to fail at anything.
But I'm not afraid of failure, like at all. And it's funny because like some of the agents had questioned me the other day about like, well, we're not doing NASCAR, but we didn't get a notice about it. You didn't tell us about it. And I said, well, does Disney tell us when they don't run a commercial anymore? Yeah, right. Like I said, I don't know of any companies that's like, okay, hold on, we're not doing this. Right. Like they don't do it, and they don't say, hey, we're doing this again. Right. And so,
if the Wright brothers didn't fail, man, and keep on at it.
Right.
We wouldn't have planes. Yeah. What about Henry Ford?
Right. So it was brought up. It was like, it was brought up. Like, was that a failure? I was like, absolutely. It was not a failure. Our agents were posting the races and they were doing all that. So I definitely would say NASCAR was not a failure. No. It just, we had bigger and other things that made more sense to work on moving forward. It was just that stepping block to go to that next thing and to try. And that's one thing that I can say, JJ Eubanks, you and I are not afraid to try. We're not afraid to fail. And I think that even with the failure, I say we're not afraid to fail. Like, I think we actually are addicted to the figuring it out. Mm-hmm. How do we make this work? Like, this isn't working. Can we make this work? There's got to be a way. Okay, pull the plug. Like with People Mover. People Mover was a great solution to a problem that was out there. It was a great thing at the time. But someone said if you fail fast. And it wasn't that it was a failure. It was just taking up so much time, so much energy. We had no control of the airlines. We had no control. We referenced the other day the lady that hit you. There was a lady that hit you in one of the people mover vehicles. Obviously, not your fault. In the police report, it's not your fault. We get a letter from the insurance company that said, don't worry, we settled with her out of court. And we're like, for what?
For what?
For what? But we called and we said, you should have never paid. This wasn't even their fault. And they said, well, you have more money, more resources. If we went to court, we were able to settle for less than if we went to court.
If we went to court, it's cheaper to settle with her now versus going to court.
I was like, this is the dumbest thing. So you're telling me because we have money, we have good insurance, we have a legitimate company, that someone can literally and intentionally hit us and sue us? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, this makes zero sense. We're putting ourselves out there.
Well, I don't know that it was necessarily against us. It was the fact that if they had to go to court,
right?
Then the insurance agency, the insurance company, would have to settle more with.
And I think that's what the lawyers that took this case on, they know that. Absolutely. They know that it's. They know it. That it's, they just throw some money at it and it's way cheaper, because if these people insist on going to court, it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm like,
because then you're going to start getting medical facilities, doctors.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Get witnesses, you get all of this stuff, and that costs money.
100%. So you look at it and it's like, was it a failure? Absolutely not. We did it. We tried it. We did well. We took a lot of people from point A to point B. And at that time, that was actually right at the time that Disney's Magical Express had stopped. So there wasn't a ton of companies out here. Now there's a ton of companies. So that's the other thing too.
Yeah, that time it was perfect.
It was.
Because we had so many advisors reaching out to us. What are we going to do? Magical Express is going away.
Don't panic.
And we said, don't panic. We got this under control. We already had 8 vehicles.
We had it. We just hadn't announced it.
Yes, we had a brand new Mercedes Sprinter van.
Yeah.
We had a 15-passenger Ford. Kind of like a Sprinter. We had 4 or 5 Suburbans. Yeah. We had a Malibu. We had a Cadillac Escalade. Mm-hmm. We had vehicles already.
But we were just getting everything lined up. But yeah, I mean, I think that so many times people see that as failures. I was like, that's definitely not a failure. That was a stepping block in going in the direction. What makes sense for our agents? Because that's another thing that I think that in, for us, I'm always asking, how does this impact our agents' business? Does it benefit? Will it help them make more money in their business? And I think that you and I would like to think that we do that well. Everything in the office, does this have to do with building, encouraging, uplifting, building our MVP's business, our agents, because they entrust in us.
Yes, absolutely.
And every decision we make, in my opinion, has to be building them up.
And let me add this, because a lot of advisors, agents come in and they say, okay, how do I invest in my business? How, do I invest money into my business? Well, let's think about what you just said. During the People Mover days, we thought People Mover would be something to benefit the advisors. Okay. And it was something to benefit the advisors because they could go to their clients and say, hey, we've got our own transportation. We don't have to depend on, Disney or other companies to pick up and transport our people. But at that time, remember, we used our own money.
Yes.
This was our own personal money to provide and do something that was going to set our advisors apart.
Yeah, it was an investment.
It was an investment.
It was an
that
investment
was a risk.
For us.
It's a risk.
Mm-hmm.
When we shut People Mover down, even though we had a risk, we were still able to sell the vehicles back to all the car companies because no one had cars.
Right. So, it was the only time in the history of us being alive that it was a good time to sell a used vehicle because like the manufacturer disruption that they had, there were not vehicles. And so people were paying I think we sold those for more than what we even paid for them. A few of them we did, and I was like, this is crazy. But
you got to take risks.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing in entrepreneurship is you always have to be like in our industry, we help our agents build their businesses like a franchise. And I think that us looking at it like, how will this help them? How will this benefit them? And I think a lot of times it's hard for them to think, that maybe the people mover, like, well, how is that for me? Well, there was a problem. We found a solution. We're getting you commission, and we're bundling it all up that if you have a problem, the cell phone number of the owners of the travel agency and the transportation company. Right. So if we don't do a good job here, it's going to impact your client's vacation. Everything. And the last thing we ever want to do is make your clients have a bad experience with something that you put together. And, that's the part of entrepreneurship, the bigger picture of things that I think many times the risk that come with owning a business is there's a lot of risk involved, but you have to think of the bigger picture. Like, how will this affect Sally in Texas? How will this affect, and if it doesn't for the masses, it doesn't make sense. And so I think that that's what a lot of times we're thinking bigger picture, like not smaller, short term, quick fix. We're thinking long term. So in closing, JJ, we've talked about risk and rewards of being entrepreneurs, of different businesses, not just the travel industry, but different businesses, and all the risk, rewards, feeling uncomfortable, getting outside of your comfort zone, failure, all of these things. I hope that our friends watching, like, really, if anything, just understands that entrepreneurship is a beautiful thing, but it's not a proven equation that you just read a book and it's like, oh, here's how you do it. You have to figure it out. So I think that with MVP, what I love that we've done is we've taken out a lot of that guesswork for our agents. So this week, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing all about risk, rewards, and entrepreneurship. Thank you all for watching, and we can't wait to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Unscripted with JJ and Jamie. Thanks for letting us be a part of your day. Don't forget to like, follow, and share on all of our social media platforms.